May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. C.S. Lewis, in his book, The Weight of Glory, uses a wonderful metaphor to describe our tendency to choose things that cause harm but give us fleeting pleasure over the infinite joy and love that God offers us. Lewis says, we are like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because we cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. Paul says something similar in his letter to the Romans, asking us to stop being so easily pleased and to instead reach for something greater, a hope, a love, a joy, a freedom beyond our imagining. Paul invites us to reach for the realm of God and give ourselves over to it. If we let God's realm captivate us, God's way of love captivate us, we will ironically know unimaginable freedom. But if we let lesser things captivate us, we will be like that child who chooses a mud pie over a holiday at the sea. Today's text from Romans is kind of unpalatable for a modern audience. Well, in Paul's day, slavery was so common that up to a third of the population in the Roman Empire was enslaved, and he seems to accept it as a way of life. We regard it as a terrible social sin it is, and would generally not choose to use it as a metaphor, especially not one that describes the Christian life of service and love and liberation we seek to live. But what Paul is driving at is, as Reverend Dr. Shanthia Monroe says, the idea of ultimate allegiance, loyalty, obedience, and service. And if we understand the metaphor that way, we can get a lot out of this passage. Paul is saying that we all give ourselves over to something. We give our allegiance and time and money and energy and thoughts to things that in the end define and captivate us, for better or for worse. So this passage invites us to ask what we will let captivate and shape us. Will it be loyalty to systems, habits, and ways of being that bring life, or to ones that bring death? Will we spend ourselves on those things that lead to the abundant life that Jesus says he came to give to all? Or will we spend ourselves on those things that cause damage and destruction to ourselves and to others? If we are honest, I imagine all of us know in some way or another what it is to be loyal to something that leads to pain, destruction, and death. Whether it's a harmful way of being in relationship, or an addiction, or unloving words, or participation in systems that oppress and harm others. We all know what it is to sin. But we are also being invited to know what it is to be freed to live a life that is captive to God's love. To put it another way, choosing to be captivated by righteousness rather than sin means choosing to be captivated by God's realm and God's love and life abundant for all. And being captive to God's realm is ultimately completely liberating, as we are empowered to become the people we are meant to be. As a New Testament scholar, David Bartlett, puts it, there are loyalties that liberate. A loyalty to the way of love, the way of Christ, leads to a freedom beyond anything we can fully imagine on this earthly plane. To return to Lewis's metaphor, we are invited to long and reach for so much more, to give up making mud pies in our run-down dirt lots, and instead to take that holiday at the sea. Our very short gospel reading also invites us to new ways of being, to radical hospitality and welcome. This passage is specifically about welcoming the disciples as they went out to spread the word of Jesus. But what can it mean for us today? What does it mean today to give even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones? Who are the ones in our culture and our lives who need the kindness of a cup of cold water on a hot day, both literally and figuratively? Who are the ones who are traveling without money, without an extra change of clothes, as the disciples did? Who are the ones who need radical hospitality? Something our faith over and over calls us to offer even to strangers. And will we recognize that in welcoming the stranger and caring for the little ones, we are welcoming and caring for Jesus himself? I love the song Dear Theodosia in Hamilton, the now wildly famous musical about the founding of the U.S., because it speaks to the perennial call to work for a better world, not just for ourselves, but for the little ones and for those who come after us. In it, Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton sing to their children about the world they hope to create for them. It is not an unproblematic song or musical, as ironically, both men who worked for freedom in the U.S. also enslaved people, and the musical doesn't really address that side of either one of them. So the song itself reminds us of the problems our country had at its inception, despite the dreams and ideals of freedom and democracy for all. And it reminds us that we still have work to do to be a place of true welcome and freedom. But the song can also remind us of our ability to work for these ideals, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us. So on this weekend, before the 4th of July, I want to end with a short video featuring the song. And I invite you to pray about and contemplate how God might be calling you and all of us to live into Christ's way of welcome, love, and abundant life for all of us. We have a chance to be so much less easily pleased and to reach for the infinite joy we know God can offer as we give our hands and our feet to building God's kingdom, to building a world marked by love, by liberation for all, by justice, by hope. May we dedicate our freedom to God's service and thus even more richly know the love and joy God offers to all.